when the lane moving fast. Ayy, let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss. Ayy.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do, or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve, so you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Monday, everybody. I know absolutely nobody actually wants to be at work today, but we are, and we're here, and we're going to dive right in and talk about a topic that I'm very, very, very passionate about. And that's always rewarding the people who are doing the right thing out there. And like kind of removing a lot of those hurdles that a lot of them have to jump through. And especially right now in our industry, with the amount of fraud and stuff that's going on, it's just like, it's like an insurmountable uphill battle. And today's guest, she's back on the show, and we're going to break down everything. She's got some really good ideas out there. So I'm a good friend, Pam Polyak with Polyak Trucking, back on the show. So Pam, thank you so much for taking the time to join me here this morning.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me and getting me on a channel that's passionate about what we've got going on here and how we can help the industry kind of survive and hit the ground running in 26. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And when I saw your post about what we're going to talk about today, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Why isn't there an incentive at this point to keep the people who are doing the right thing in business? And I think that, from my perspective, it's like we could sit here and talk about everything that's wrong with the industry until we're blue in the face, right? And that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people want to sit there and focus in on that, because look at the old adage, you guys, if it bleeds, it reads. And in today's digital environment, the more clicks, the more views, the more they can sell all that shit off to advertisers. But there's a large percent of this industry that is multi-generational trucking professionals that are, I feel like, teetering at the point of just being like, why even try? Why even bother anymore? It's great that the current administration is taking notice, but like, how are we going to afford to stay in business if this continues?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where the entire idea came from. I had been talking to my dad, who retired in 2019, and I bought him out as the third generation owner. I said, the words that we hear now every single day from fraud and theft were things that he never even had to worry about. Yeah. The biggest concern were padlocks and locks on the pigtails and that kind of stuff. And then as the industry changed, okay, then GPS became a thing. And then you needed GPS on trailers, and that added expense. Okay, it makes sense. For us particularly, we're a huge drop trailer carrier. That makes sense. All of a sudden, it just works. And now in the last 3 to 4 years, particularly for us, we've seen it every single day. And I think it's gotten so bad that nobody can keep up from a technology standpoint. And we have to continue to use time and resources to defend that we are a good person, to new customers, new brokers, to defend that we are not the ones that are fraud, right? And that's all costing us time and money. And so my question to the government is, how can you help us good carriers? How can you say they meet all of these thresholds, they do these safety things, they've done their IFTA on time, they've paid their heavy use tax, all of these different criteria that we can come up with and say, you've done a good job, let's reward you now. Let's turn around and give you a tax credit. Let's get you a break. Let's give you a grant. Do something to help the good guys from suffering so bad as we try and change the narrative of the fraud.
So what do you mean by you have to spend more money to prove you're a legitimate carrier? I think like that's I feel like I know, like I definitely know the answer to that, but I want to put that out there because I feel like that's an oversight by so many people out there because, again, technology is great, but like at what expense, because it's like there's only shocking in the real world, you guys, when you operate off of a legitimate P&L, when you're a bootstrap company and you don't have a bunch of cash to burn, you have to look at a lot of this stuff out there. And, again, so like what are some of those hurdles you have to jump through, Pam?
Well, when you're when you're turning around, especially signing up with a new broker, right? There's obviously the risk that they are the fraudulent ones on the other side. But at the same time, they're going to take the good ones are going to say to us, hey, we want a picture of your driver holding up his driver's license next to the DOT on the truck, right? So now we're pulling that driver over, we're reassigning things like that. So there's a time element to it. But then from the cost standpoint, we're implementing all of these systems, right? You've got to be the carrier with highway. You've got to be with RMIS. You're adding all of their tracking, all of their systems. The drivers need to download every single one of their tracking GPS apps that they can come up with and accept the tracking and just go through all that time hurdle of proving that we're where we say we're going to be.
Yeah.
And then God forbid if dispatch needs to change the driver last minute, like, oh Lord, that can certainly be a thing too. And it's just, we're constantly trying to show that we are a good company. And now, and this is going to be a little off topic of what we were talking about, but it's this theory now that I started my brokerage almost 17 years ago.
Yeah.
And it shows at this exact location, this terminal that I built. We are based here, my logistics and my assets. And now all of a sudden that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I can double broker. All of a sudden I can be fraudulent. And people are declining us because our address is the same. But then if I go through and I change it to like my personal house, now what?
Yeah.
Like you're constantly needing to prove who you are and what you do as a business, but it has nothing to do with longevity anymore. It's not saying, okay, Polyak's DOT number has been active for 55 years. They don't care about that anymore. They don't care that the brokerage has been around since before fraud was ever even a conversation. But now the fraudsters, whatever you want to call them, right? They're breaking into our systems. Mm-hmm. You know, they're doing identity theft. They're duplicating the bill of ladings. They're doing all of these things. And at the end of the day, who's paying the cost? The assets are, right. If we do a broker that it had no intention on paying the bills and we picked up a legit load and a legit shipper and we took it to a warehouse, unbeknownst to us, the whole thing is a fraud. And you don't find out until 30 days later when you're trying to contact them for pay and there's been no pay. So we're also taking the hits on not getting the receivables met as well.
Yeah.
So it just becomes a very complex system of how much time and energy we're putting into things to protect ourselves. And it's exhausting, to your point. You know, we're going, why do we have to keep proving ourselves? And I get the theory of it. It's just a generic question of we have to keep proving ourselves, but there's no, like, help us, because it's the bad guys that are winning. It's the guys who aren't doing their IFTA right. They're lying to insurance about how many miles they're running. They're non-existent in America. You know, all of those things that are happening that are lowering the price of the market to begin with. But then they're adding all these added insurance, right? What was the last year's increase? 6.5% nationwide for insurance on carriers?
Across the board. Any commercial.
Where did that number come from? What did we do to deserve that? Well, it's the fraud. It's the nuclear verdicts. It's all of that they're not getting reimbursed for.
Correct.
So although I understand it, you're taking it from the good guys. You're taking it from the guys, and then you're blaming it on the SMS scores at times and cab reports. Well, we all kind of know that SMS system is very shaky to begin with in terms of how it calculates out things. So my proposal was just let's come up with criteria that actually qualify you as a good standing carrier and then give you a kickback for it. If you're going to have the implementation things that you need, whether it's facial recognition, whether it's portals, whether from the highway to macro point to any of these other things. Yes, you get the tax write-off of the software, but if you're a good carrier and you can prove all these other things that you're doing right, you don't have clearinghouse issues, you're a US-based company, you've done all your other filings on time, give us something for it.
You would think, though, Pam, that this might come as a surprise to a lot of people, but the government's revenue comes from taxes. And I don't know if enough people actually comprehend that that's how the government's funded. But I think we are reaching that point where a lot of people, and again, like there's a fallacy out there that trucking's dominated by a couple of like megas. That's not the case. Like 97% of the trucks on the road right now are 10 truck or less operations that are out there. And, contrary to what the internet says, you don't just snap your fingers and become a millionaire in business. It takes a lot of work to build a sustainable revenue stream to come in. And then Uncle Sam comes in and takes their cut. And I feel like it's gotten to the point, and this isn't necessarily just a trucking thing. I think this is a small business thing where a lot of small business owners are almost like, what's the point? My insurance keeps going up. My expenses keep going up. I can't raise my prices because then I lose customers. And if I don't have customers, I don't have revenue. And there has to be something. And again, I feel like brokers have to do a lot better job as well. I will call brokers out for some of the hoops that they make these carriers jump through. It's asinine what some of these things that I've seen out there. I personally, again, I can only speak for myself and my operation. We like to work with the same trucking companies time and time again. I do not like going out to the spot board unless I have to. And that is only if my regulars are not in the area. Then we have to go out and source new capacity. But if I'm working with a carrier and, things happen, I know that I've been doing this long enough, Pam, to know, like, I know the risk of onboarding an unvetted carrier is far greater than paying my regular more money to do the freight, because I know what comes along with. And then I also know the direct correlation to the customer acquisition cost. Like, shippers are not taking inbound calls as much as people want to think they are, right? Like, they don't need any additional help right now. So it's like, once you have business, you have to protect that business. And I don't know why you would go out there to try and save $100, because that's ultimately what people are doing when they drop the legitimate carriers that are out there. So again, my long-winded response is like, I think what you're proposing, like an actual tax break, maybe it's going to come in the form of, like, you don't have to pay fuel tax or something. There has to be something where there can be a temporary reprieve to keep you in business, because otherwise my fear is that people are going to be like, what's the point? What's the point of showing up and doing this anymore if everything we're doing to stay legitimate is actually costing us business, when these unvetted fraudulent providers are able to come in, operate free of recourse, which that's what's happening. They're not being punished at all. And my proposition is once you've found these individuals that are doing it, that are operating illegally, they're working under the wrong visa, they're not doing the right thing, the punishment should be so severe that everybody who's doing it that way will be so petrified of being caught that it will either force them to quit and drop what they're doing or legitimize their company. And if you do that, I feel like that is going to set the standard to where, the companies that are doing the right thing, they should be incentivized to continue to do that. Because again, how many more videos do we need to see of these guys out there doing the wrong thing on the freeway and people dying? Because that's what this ultimately leads to.
Yeah, and they're making a lot of money. And the reality is the government as a whole has never been known to have great technology, right? Yeah. Everything's outdated, everything's this, everything's that. And the fact that the fraud is starting within the internet and starting within the duplication of it, they don't have to have boots on the ground here. So the technology needs to match or be greater than what the fraud is, and the government is too slow to do that. And I came up with this thing, and I'm sure somebody else has thought of it, right? Why don't we have a system like the UIIA system? You go into a rail yard, you need to be fingerprinted, you need to have your ID, and that driver's license, that CDL number is linked to a company.
Yeah.
Why don't we have that across the board where a shipper can put in a CDL number with the driver that's at the window and find out that they don't work for the company that got brokered the load or got sent the load, or the broker notified them of the load, right? There's a fraud prevention thing right there. If we can create a system that makes it make sense where that CDL isn't under numerous different DOT numbers and MC numbers, and it's linked to different trucks and VIN numbers. I mean, there's so many different options, but the reality is the government's too slow on the technology that's happening at a very rapid pace. Yeah. Every time you come up with something, it could be obsolete in months because there's one more thing that's that much better and try to catch it. And the fraud, they know how to do it, right? Yeah. They know how to backdoor the systems. I mean, we just saw it not only just in trucking, but recently in the news with Minnesota and the school systems and the debt collections. They're like, oh, there's kids who are getting these loans and these financial credits, but they don't even exist. And they call them ghost students. And I'm like, well, we've been dealing with ghost truckers now for years.
Yeah.
They don't exist. So let's create a system that makes it make sense. But in the meantime, help the people that are good, help the people who are doing it right, that have safety programs in place, that are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing immediately. Like help them today, because the systems that need to be created are likely years off of being any type of successful. And we don't have that much time.
No, I agree. We don't have that much time. I think the technology is already there. I think it already exists. There's just so many bureaucratic hurdles to get anything actually implemented. And that's the disconnect between Capitol Hill and Main Street. All right. Capitol Hill is, again, most of these officials that are out there, I'm not saying they're bad people, but they have careers too, right? They have families to provide for too. And if they're out there, they're looking to protect that, right? Again, I'm not here to argue what's right or what's wrong, but at the end of the day, we need to move quick. Like the tech is there right now. I guarantee between highway, freight validate, all the carrier vetting, RMIS, DH, every company out there that they have the technology today that the government could integrate into their system and get it done. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are fighting in the private sector to build this up. All it takes is one API integration to like notify and flag all of this stuff, right? And then again, you look at the drug clearinghouse that's out there. Every legitimate driver is in that, right? To the best of my knowledge, is that accurate, Pam? That every legitimate driver?
I mean, they certainly should be, but
exactly right. So it's like we say that there's got to be some clear identifier that's out there. Probably their driver's, their CDL license number from the state that they're in. So again, I feel like it's not as complex as a lot of people want to make it out to be. It's actually
doesn't need to be.
Exactly right. And I feel like that could be done. And this is where like my biggest issue comes in here, because this country, this industry in particular, is on shaky ground as it is from the profitability standpoint. This, the freight market has been depressed for a very, very, very long time. There are a bunch of people who I don't know. I don't have access to everybody's financials, but they're probably on their ninth life at this point when we're looking at 3 years of non-profitability, break even, everything else that comes along with it. The time, and I've said this on the show, the current administration, Secretary Duffy, the current DOT, FMCS, they didn't cause this problem. All right. They didn't. But it is on them to fix it and fix it quick, because otherwise, where are we going to be? Where are we going to be?
Well, it's going to kick out everybody. But here's the other thing too. It's more than just trucking, right? If you take the almost $4 billion in 24 that was recorded as theft and fraud, who paid for those $4 billion worth of fraud? I don't even know what the 2025 number is. I'm sure it's well above that.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at that, who paid for that? If an entire truckload of microwaves got stolen, right? At the end of the day, who paid for that? Is it the insurance company that filtered down to everybody else? Is it the shipper that filtered that cost down to every single person, and the end user being every single American? That's the entire point of this thing, is that we have this huge issue with fraud, but everybody doesn't realize it affects the bottom end user. It affects the person that's on the shelf or that's in the store buying the things on the shelf, because they're adding 25, 35 cents to dollars to hundreds of dollars to add up all that fraud with all those other loads that got stolen. Mm-hmm. And insurance is the same thing. Assuming insurance even covers whatever fraudulent activity happened, which there's not a lot of cases that they are. It's just on the broker, it's on the carrier. So then those costs gets filtered down. Even the most recent one with the crab legs for Costco, that broker's like, I'm on the hook for this. I'm screwed. And a small company like that, me doing a $400,000 load and losing it, I'd be done for tomorrow. Like, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
And then it's like you filter down the cost more and more and more to the end user. And let's say Costco stepped up, and I'm I don't know if I should say names or not. What to say? Okay, we'll split it with you. We'll cover that cost 50-50 with you. We understand it was an accident or whatever, right? They want to be nice, extend an olive branch so they don't go out of business, whatever. But it still costs that at the end of the day is going to get filtered down.
Yeah.
So if we're not protecting not just the fraud, but protecting the people who are trying to do it the right way and have these added expenses of doing it the right way and time, we need to come up with something that just makes it make sense for us to stay in business and say they're fighting for the good. They're not just fighting against the bad.
Yeah.
I reward the good and punish the bad. And we need both. Right now, they're focused on punishing the bad, and I'm all for it. 100%. You're punishing the bad. Finally, thank God. Let's go. But reward the good.
No, I agree. And I've said that a few times. Not as like that's the best way to put it, right? Like stop, as much as you're fighting the bad, you got to start rewarding the good here. And I look at it as all the documentation required to operate a business in this country, you should have access to that at any given point in time, right? Like as the owner, I'm assuming, again, Pam and I only know each other from the show, but I'm assuming Pam is highly organized and has everything and able to prove their legitimacy very quick, just like I have that ability. I have everything saved. I don't want them to do this, but if the feds kick my door down right now and said, I need to see all of your documentation, I have it saved in a folder, I could show them that. I feel like it's gotten to the point to what you're describing there is like, how do we have this on the FMCSA's database that filters into all the vetting software that's out there? Just a simple gold badge. Hey, up to date on their taxes, EFTA, all of that stuff, they're legitimate, work with them. And again, if they can't prove that stuff, and if there's any ounce of inability to prove the legitimacy of their company, they should be temporarily shut down. Like if you are not organized, you should not be moving freight. All right. And I say that on the broker side too. Straight up, if you cannot prove you are a legitimate business, you should be temporarily deactivated until you can have any sense of like organization to show that like, hey, I'm here, I'm legit, and everything else. And then like furthermore, I look at a lot of these things like there's a growing trend of people selling their business, air quote, on like Facebook, and then people are coming in and getting access to that. I would almost go as far as the current administration, the DOT, pausing anybody's ability to do that for the time being. Because that is like that backdoor gateway that you're talking about, Pam, where I feel like all they need is like, oh, hey, now I have a legitimate access into the FMCSA's database. I can go in there and change that. And then you go in there and you do a bunch of that stuff. And then that's what I just feel like that's how they're operating. They're finding those people who are trying to sell for $10,000 on Facebook or wherever it is, right? Hey, but you have to give us all of your logins to everything. And then they go in, they buy 10 of those companies, they spend $100,000, they steal 10 truckloads, they just 10x their profit. There has to be some form of thing where there's like a legitimate vetting process or something to curb this. But again, I feel like why people aren't doing anything or they're continuing to do this, Pam, there's no fear of repercussion. And I feel like that is like kind of where crime is in this country. There's just no fear of repercussion anymore. And it's not the expense of the legitimate providers.
Yeah, I was at a conference, the BCS conference in Orlando, and we had a whole conversation about it and heard about a scenario with Danielle Spinelli and stuff where they caught an entire bunch of thieves, right? Caught them red-handed off the rail. They were stealing Nike sneakers, and they had them in handcuffs, and the DA would only prosecute 1 out of the 5. And they were wearing the Nike shoes that they stole. It's like there's no repercussions for it. So there's a small part of your brain that goes, if you can't beat them, join them. But that's not morally where I stand, but I can see where there's a lot of people going, hey, if I could tweak this IFTA and I could do this with this insurance, then that's how I'm going to make some more money. And the reality is that's where a lot of these companies are at, where they're at do or die and making decisions of, okay, I know I need to start doing this brokerage, right? That's in the old school, that was easy money. And it probably still is now for a lot of purposes of have a brokerage. You don't have the assets and all the costs and expense of assets. So let's do the brokerage. Okay, fine. But you've got all this added expense from that end as well, and all the tracking expenses and all those things that the carrier needs to pay for, or even the brokerage. And you're stuck going, how do I make this work? How do I make money and do it legitimately and do it legally all the time? And it's just gotten harder and harder every day as more and more fraud happens. I mean, we had 2 stolen loads, and they were back in 23. So it was really kind of right at that cusp where it was still embarrassing to say. You didn't want to promote that you were the one that had a stolen load. And now I feel like everybody's had a stolen load, and it's like, where's that cost going to? I had to pay for it, right? I had to cut the check. I had to cut the cargo check because insurance didn't cover it.
Yeah.
And it just continues down the rabbit hole of how do we get these systems to talk to each other so that we can do the fraud and prevent it the right way. We create the database that has it, but then those are the ones that are playing fair should be rewarded. If you're out there doing right by the brokerage, let's say you've got the brokerage and you've got the right systems, you've got the carrier vetting systems, and you've got all these other things, but not be punished too if you somehow fell victim to it. Because there's a lot of elaboration going on. These are very elaborate plans that they have to steal the identities, steal the bill of lading, steal the actual pickup locations, the actual product. It's everywhere. And right now, everybody's got a story about it.
Yeah.
And if we're not stepping in to help as the government, the bad guys are going to continue to win.
Yeah.
It's that simple. They're going to take us out. They're going to take the good guys out because we can't afford that $400,000 cargo of crab legs.
Yeah. No, Pam, and this just came to my mind. It's almost like a longevity tax credit or like a highway safety tax credit where it's like, hey, Polyak Trucking has been at the exact same address, have had active authority in a clean operating record for 50 years. They get an X amount percentage of a tax credit. They can deduct X amount out there. And then I feel like, because again, it's like a lot of these fly-by-night operations, it's going to start to identify the businesses that are like, wait a second, you've been in business for 5 years, but have 5 different addresses. Why? It's like, and then that's going to actually start to change that conversation that goes around because again, I don't know of too many legitimate businesses that change physical addresses or reincarnate multiple times, right? Like not within a certain time frame. Because it costs a lot of money to do that.
Well, and you had it in one owner's name, and then the owner puts it in their sister's name, and then they put it in the wife's name, and then they put it in, other people's names. And the reality is, I mean, that's where, you're certain your carrier form one will show there's multiple addresses listed with this, or there's different things. But when you use the freight validate system, I mean, Dale's king of that stuff, turning around and saying, hey, this owner is actually affiliated with this owner's name, and versions of this name are actually affiliated with several other companies. Mm-hmm. But you have to have all of those systems and pay for all of those systems, which are fair to them and the people who created it to pay for those systems. But now as dispatchers sitting here going, I've got to validate you through 3, 4, 5 different systems, all just to make sure you have it. But then here's the thing that I've found out recently. There is not a single system out there where you can tell what the vehicle is registered under. And if I'm wrong, somebody comment in the comments, because I know of several companies, and I'm certainly not going to say who, valid DOT, valid MC number, operating insurance, all this other stuff, and they never paid for their license plates to be re-registered every year.
Interesting.
But that's not linked to anything with the FMCSA. That's not linked to the SMS. That's not linked to your safer stat scores. That's not anything. That's just different, right? It's because you're not playing with the federal versus the local government versus the states. Yeah. So you've got people out there who are saying, I'm not going to pay that $2,800 for the license plate. I'm not going to pay it, and you'll never know it.
Yeah, I almost look at it like this, Pam. I think that it's also gotten to the point, and again, I'm the last person that wants the government to take over anything further than what they currently have. But I also look at it that we need to remove the state's ability to delineate what's legitimate and what's not when they're on federal highways and operating in interstate commerce. I feel like if you're going to do interstate transit at all, I feel like it's kind of gotten to the point where it needs to be federally regulated only. There has to be one set standard out there. If you're going to get a CDL, it doesn't matter what state you're in. you got to do it this way. If you're going to operate a business, it doesn't matter what state you're in, you got to do it this way. There has to be federal oversight at that point, because I feel like, again, there would be less and less of a likelihood that things could fall between the cracks. Because again, if there's, again, you have the federal government, the state government, the city government, county, whatever, there's a bunch of different layers and none of the systems are talking. So I feel like if you're going to be in transportation, you're going to do interstate commerce at all, that should be a federal thing at the end of the day. And that's just where it should all start. And I feel like they need to centralize all of that data and all of that information. Yeah,
I 100% agree. And I think that's the only thing that's going to save it. Again, it's just the government we're talking about.
I know.
To your point, the technology's there. We can do it. I know we can. I know people themselves who can write the codes to make it work. Yep. But instead they're doing everything else that they can to help, but we're pinwalled into these, the government's got to put in their part. And in the meantime, while we're creating all this extra added expense to do what we can, and the government's not doing it fast enough. And trust me, I said it with a great amount of respect. I completely love what 2025 looked like in terms of what transportation's doing as a whole, 100%. And I'm grateful for it, because this is the first time in years we're feeling like there could be a positive change going on.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen fast enough when the fraud is in our computers.
Yeah. I think we're at that point, Pam, where it's like, I'm right there with you. I love the attention that things are getting, but like, we can't let this continue to go on to where legitimate companies are going to go under, and then we're going to be in an even worse environment than we are right now. But Pam, that's going to be it for today. How does anybody reach out to you though to find out more about what you got going on?
Well, I've got two different kind of companies. I've got Polyak Consulting.com, which is I help the 1 to 10 truck operations do internal audits, DOT audit, mock audits, those kind of things, help those companies out. But also PolyakTrucking.com, Pam at Polyak Trucking or Pam at PolyakConsulting.com. Shoot me an email. Also find me on LinkedIn, all the socials, all the fun socials out there.
Perfect. Pam, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me. But that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you saw value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Hey, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moves.